I wanted to go over the best bow hunting release that you can use for this fall and also during your off-season practice time. A lot of people don't know, but I did shoot for Matthews Archery on their factory pro staff back in the day. I've won a couple of the open national shoots in the ASA, placed high in IBO, Cabela's at different times. Won a semi-pro shoot, men's open division in the ASA, and then a lot of indoor shooting, a lot of state of Michigan indoor shooting. Shot a lot of 60 spot games throughout the years. Really something that I did at what at that time was a high level. We're talking a long time ago. So I cannot shoot at that level. I actually picked up my indoor bow. I'm going to shoot it tonight and shot the other day too. So I still like going and trying to pound some spots and get a 60 spot game and try to. I'm probably 2 months away from that. So, but I do have some experience with these different releases, and I wanted to go over why you might use one versus another. And I'm going to focus sometimes quite a bit on these caliper releases, back tension releases, and really why you might use from one from the other. You know what's pretty cool? Each one of these releases right here, they're at least 20 years old, each one of them. Had them for a long time, and we'll touch on that in a second. But to me, there's sometimes some poor advice out there for how you use a back tension release, why you might use a caliper versus another release, and when you're shooting at a deer, when you're shooting at, because you know, I've migrated from, I've always been a really big bow hunter. I started bow hunting before I gun hunted back in the mid 80s. And then I migrated into where I shot a lot of tournaments. I used to shoot 4 indoor leagues a week, shot 3D tournaments around the country. Really got into the tournament, but I always went back to my bow hunting roots, and I want to help you. Traditional Caliper Head right here is Caliper release. This is a Scott grip release. This is not going to be any type of consistency when it comes to a brand or a certain manufacturer. Certain model. It's another caliper release. This is actually from an old true ball release. I don't even know how old this one is, but it's a pretty old, a long time. I would guess each one of these is in the 90s. You can see even on this old caliper release, anodizing on this release is actually starting to wear off. I've used it so much. This was one that Jerry Carter gave me a long time ago. I don't know how often he sold this one. It's called the Insatiable Hole, printed on there. So whatever reason, but it was kind of a different name, one of his models that he had out there for a long time. This one was a Big Kid 3D. They're extremely popular. I actually have another one of these. So different releases, and I'm gonna go through what ends up happening in a lot of these caliper releases. I like this because this grip release, I've used it for a long time, but I tie this before I go out into the stand. You can see it right there. And I like this because then when I climb into my tree stand, it is completely out of the way. It's all the way down the sleeve. So I can climb, get into my stand. I don't have to worry about any Velcro opening or closing. Don't have to worry about a buckle over gloves. It always hangs here no matter what kind of gloves I have. It's there. And then I always use a hand warmer pocket where I'm sticking both hands in, and then it just hangs there. It's always ready. It's always right there to shoot. I can grab it at any time, very easy to grab, very easy to pull back. So index release, what I like about an index release, and this is really important, is that when I'm shooting, for one, it always comes to this jaw right here. And I put the string on the tip of my nose. And always on the tip, you don't want it on the side because it can slide back and forth. Depending on if you're pointing up or down, it can establish an inconsistency. So when you're on the tip of the nose is always better than the side. And then I'm looking through a peep sight. So it's, to me, a 3-point anchor part, or a 3-point anchor system where my hand's back here, I have that grip against my jaw, string's touching the tip of my nose, and I'm looking through a peep sight. So by the time you line those 3 things up together, then you're really anchored in, locked in, and it doesn't matter if you're shooting up or downhill, you're always going to be locked in. You just have to bend at your waist and shoot up or downhill. What I really like about these is I can take that anchor point even better. See, it's a thumb trigger release. Put that in the corner of my jaw. Sits right in there. And then unlike the index trigger I'm taking, you actually have to push that post to get it to go off. This one, I'm relying on back tension when I'm aiming. Eventually, these 3 fingers, basically in easy terms, went out over this finger, and as you're pushing and pulling, you pull that into it and you never consciously push this trigger. And that's the big difference. A lot of times with index triggers and a caliper head, people start to develop target panic. And they're getting in here and they're flinching and they're hitting this before they get there. Sometimes people ask, are you actually coming down to the bullseyes or going up to the bullseye? That means you have target panic. If you have to rely on that, a lot of times people are doing a drive-by where they're just coming through the bullseye, or where they want to aim, and then they're just hitting this. I've seen people with their fingers out like this, and they just hit it when they go by. And if the timing's right, then it works sometimes. But people develop target panic. I developed target panic back in the day. I want to say it was the 80s. I missed some really nice bucks, and a couple of them, my pin was not even on the buck. I'm not kidding. But the pin was not even there, and I shot, and of course missed it because it wasn't even on the buck. And 20 yards, 25 yards. Some bucks I'd scouted all summer long, and then you finally get that chance, and you have target panic, so you hit it, and it's gone. Wouldn't matter if I was using this release or this release, either one of these or any of the other releases I have. You can never treat target panic by just changing releases. It's completely mental. What I like about what I do, my own practice routine, is I use a 4-finger caliper release like this, or the Big Kid 3D, and I'm using these as complete back tension. So when I'm aiming, I'm locked in like this, and I'm looking, and I'm pushing, pulling, and eventually that goes off. I don't actually squeeze it to go off. If you have target panic, taking a 4-finger like this and shooting blank bail over and over again, training your mind that this is the proper way to shoot, and letting that release go off by itself, using back tension to pull. That's how I broke my target panic, probably in 1989 or 1990, somewhere around there. I can remember the day I broke it. I actually called my dad and told him, hey, I broke target panic. I'm going to be able to shoot really well now. And it did go up from there. You know, went up to 60 spots, averaging over 59 spots in indoor leagues for many years. And so shooting that over and over again. Once I broke it, then I was home free. I broke it by taking a butter dish lid, putting it on my target, and if I couldn't hold on that butter dish lid and just let it go off naturally without jamming my thumb on it, once I was able to do that, I broke it. But there were many times that I shot blank bail over and over again. Blank bail just means you float on it, and you're just floating, you just keep pushing and pulling, and you just practice on making a good shot with good form and letting it go off. Transfer to trying to shoot that butter dish lid, and it wouldn't work. I'd flinch a little bit. But one day, as I was doing that, I broke it. And I taught my mind that I could actually hold on there. I could wait for the release to go off. And once I broke it back there, that was literally 30 years ago. I haven't looked back. And so it's still important. This takes more time to shoot. It takes more muscle memory and strength. So I love practicing with this release. I do not hunt, and I don't encourage you to hunt with one of these releases, even though it looks good on TV, and I'll explain that in a second. I hunt with one of these. This is my normal hunting release. I'll hunt with one of these. To me, it really doesn't matter what release that you're using, meaning that if you're using a hunting release with a caliper head, you should be able to learn to shoot good with this one or this one. It really doesn't matter. You see people with 50 releases or 100 releases. That tells me they've gone through a lot of target panic and inconsistency in shooting. You're not going to make a difference just from switching from one release to another. And that goes for the bow you shoot. I love my Matthews bows. I've shot them since '92. But I can pick up any model of Matthews. I can take my new bow, put my old sight on it, shoot the same arrow, same speed, and go out and hunt with it in a couple hours. And I did that last year with my VXR. I had this about 11 o'clock. We set it up. I had it in the woods hunting that afternoon for the first time. It's that easy. You just go back and forth. It should never be the bow that actually makes you more accurate, or the release, or the sight, anything, because you're always just going to be chasing your accuracy at that point. So the reason I don't like shooting with these, again, I want to hold back and wait for that to go off. That means if a buck's coming through, I'm going to have to follow him if he's moving. I'm going to have to try to stop him. Well, there's sometimes when I'm shooting this indoors, it takes 6 or 7 or 8 seconds for it to go off. And once I start passing that, my eyes get blurry and I let down. And that's what I've trained myself to do. When my eyes get blurry and I'm starting to shake more, I'm not going to just fling off a shot and punch the trigger. I don't want to ever punch this trigger. I don't want to ever make it forcibly go off, because it starts to develop bad habits. So even if I shot this 5,000 times leading up to the hunting season, I'm not going to use it during hunting because I don't want to punch the trigger when a buck's at 15 yards and slowly walking between two trees, where I can take this right here and I can just simply, he's there, whether I stop him or not. When I go like that, that bow is going off. Because I've trained my muscle memory, and because I have that back tension, because I'm pushing and pulling and I'm aiming well and I'm not flinching, I don't have that target panic, then when I'm pushing and pulling, I'm still doing the same mechanics, I'm using the same mechanics, I'm still locked in, so that when I want to shoot, I just simply pull the trigger like I would a gun, steadily, slowly, it goes off when I determine it. When I'm using a 4-finger release like this, I have to wait for that to go off. It looks really cool out in food plot hunting and open hunting when you're sitting out of a box blind in one of the Fantasyland states and there's a big buck munching on some turnips or some beans, and you can sit there all day and just keep pushing, pulling, and wait for it to go off. It goes off. It looks cool on TV. Folks, that's not the real world. Most of the bucks I shoot, I'm stopping in an instant. When they stop, I have to shoot. When they stop, I have to move a little bit to shoot through a hole. You might have 2 seconds, 3 seconds to make that shot. I have a video out. It's a 10-second bow hunting rule. And what I find is, what I've seen, and I look at all my mature bucks that I've shot over the last 30 years, and I look back from the time that I saw them to picking up my bow, to pulling back, to aiming at them, to getting the shot off is less than 10 seconds. This isn't food plot Fantasyland hunting. This is real world hunting in the trees, and I can't use one of these in the trees, and I don't encourage you to. Learn how to shoot this for practice. Get some kind of caliper release. You don't have to try 50 of these or 20 of these or 10 or 5. Just learn how to shoot one well. You'll do really well. And I like this for me personally. I know it's an odd release. I wrap that around. I let it hang so that I can put my hands in and out of my hand warmer tube. It just hangs just like that. Pretty easy to use. It's always right there. Climb trees, like I said, going up, works really well. I like this caliper release because it has a hinge on it. And then what that means is when I have this on and I'm hunting with this, then when I climb, I can actually turn this down, put it in my sleeve, or turn it back this way. I guess it was the way it would go, but I can put it down into my sleeve with my hand going through like this. Hangs, I can bury it into my sleeve so I can climb, and then I don't have to take it on and off. It hinges. There's a lot of good releases like this that hinge nowadays. Again, this is my favorite for hunting. When I go to the archery shop tonight in Sparta, I'll be using probably this one. This one I get to my favorite, but it doesn't matter. They both hit in the same spot. If they hit 1/8 of an inch off, I'm not good enough or steady enough right now to know the difference. But they both work the same way. I have another Big Kit 3D. You can tell these, again, I've used all these releases for a long time. You shouldn't have to change releases. Understand why you might use one versus another. Back in the day, they had a Stanislavski release, and I think they still do. It's got a hinge on it, and you have to really rotate this back in order for the angle to be correct to release the string on that hinge. There's a lot of companies that make these now. These Carter releases, back in the day, they were a fortune for me at that age, and that's probably why I don't have a whole bunch of them. This was nice that I got this from Jerry Carter when he had the company. I don't even know if he still does or if he's still around. Haven't kept in touch with my shooting people that I used to over the last 20 years. But hope this makes sense to you. Really, this is the time to start practicing. I find that if I practice this and I master it, even if I'm shooting on a blank bale over and over again, you can learn to translate that into your bow hunting practice. And once you get this mastered and you get it down and you don't have target panic of some kind, then it really shouldn't matter which release you shoot, accuracy wise, shooting wise. I love these for the push-pull aspect and the surprise. It makes you hold back a lot longer. You build muscle memory. These are great for practicing the off-season, great for blank bale, great for teaching yourself how to shoot right, shoot correctly, great for making sure that you don't have target panic. And then again, flipping over to a caliper during the hunting season has been a big benefit to me, and always going back to these when I want to practice and want to build myself up and put me in shape for hunting. I'm hoping to put myself in shape a little bit tonight. I actually won't be using my VXR. I have an old Matthews Rival Pro. That thing's from the 90s. It's a tank, and I'll be using that tonight. Pretty easy to clip these right on the string. See right here, get used to it. I don't like them if you're hanging. That one time that it hits the string, and goes off and drops when you're out in a tree stand, that'd be a really bad thing. So some people like these because they can hang them on their tree stand, but boy, if it gets windy, if you're not paying attention, if you just knock your bow a little bit, it doesn't take much to push this right over to the string, and then you're in big trouble, especially if it's down there laying at the bottom of the tree when a big buck comes in. Hope this makes sense with some releases. It's something I used to be into quite a bit, and looking at all the different models, and I just hope you can become a better shooter this year. And here's a way to do it by using a variety of different releases, no matter what the brand.